Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Studio 60 Live. In a time where simple formal education is not enough to get an edge on the competition in the job market, vocational training is becoming an increasingly popular option to accent one's skill set. The City and Guilds Group provides services to promote skill development across several countries with over 130 internationally recognized qualifications. In early 2008, the City and Guilds Group handed the reins over to a new CEO who has taken them through a long period of substantial growth. Our special guest for today is that man, the CEO and Director General of the City and Guilds Group, Mr. Chris Jones. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very well indeed, thank you.
All right. My first question to you is sort of a very generic one, but you've dedicated a lot of time and effort to actually promoting the industry of vocational training and skills development. So what was your motivation to get into this industry, and what continues to motivate you to move forward?
Well, the motivation was twofold. I'm an individual who didn't go to university, and I've been very fortunate to have had a career that has taken me across different parts of the world in terms of working, and very different industry sectors. But what it's also given me personally is a real sense of wanting to ensure that, young people really understand the opportunities that are available to them, even if they don't have the desire to, or the academic ability perhaps, to go to university. So first and foremost, it's something that I feel very personally sort of passionate about. But secondly, why is it important? The one thing that seems to be present in almost every meeting I go to, whether it's in the UK, whether it's here in sort of the Emirates, or whether it's in other parts of Asia, and even if you go to America, is employers are constantly talking about the need to address their skill gaps. They're constantly talking about the need to find a workforce that is going to be able to deliver them the productivity gains that they're looking for. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is if they as employers are engaging much more in the vocational education agenda. And whether that's through apprenticeships or other forms of vocational training, it's really important that we continue to highlight the benefits that vocational training delivers, not just to individuals, to learners, but primarily to industry themselves. So it's twofold. One, from deep personal attachment to it, but a very clear economic argument for why we need to promote it too.
Yeah, but speaking of this economic argument, you recently mentioned at a debate that the UK is facing a skills shortage.
Oh yeah.
So can you shed more light on that? I mean, with all these institutes that are coming up, so how is it that people are still not recognizing the potential of vocational training?
I think it's, at one level, still holds a little bit of a stigma. If we look at sort of the UK system particularly, there has been for many, many years a sense that it is only through university that you're going to be able to have a successful career.
Yeah.
Now, what we're seeing changing in the UK particularly is the introduction of university fees. So for a typical UK student, they're going to be paying around about £9,000 a year. They're leaving university with a debt of between £44,000 to £50,000.
Yeah, but that only happened recently, right, with the increase in the...
Well, that's over about the course of about the last sort of 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So we're seeing a renaissance, I think, in terms of what are my choices in terms of how I enter the world of work. We're also seeing government policy promoting apprenticeships as a valued and viable alternative to entering the world of work. But I think the broader issues are that the British sort of industry is beginning to recognise that as they look out through the next 20 to 30 years, they are facing significant skill gaps and skill shortages. Why? Well, we have a demographic that is ageing. Right. We suffer the same in many of the developed countries of an ageing sort of workforce. And the need to actually ensure that, if manufacturing, if engineering, if construction is going to continue the upward trend, the only way they're going to be able to do that is by having very, very clear, strong programs of vocational training. So, we're imploring sort of employers to engage in that debate, to take much greater ownership around skills and vocational education, because, quite frankly, they can't afford not to address it. Right. We also have the challenge of education is something that governments like to meddle in, and that's not unique to the UK. But when you look at sort of skills, it is a difficult and complex environment. You know, we have different government agencies involved, we have different sort of funding methodologies, we have different degrees of employer ownership. So we're looking for some simplicity in the system, we're looking for more stability in the system.
Right.
And if I give you one example, over the last 30 years we've had 61 Secretaries of State responsible for skills policy.
Right.
That has created a huge amount of turmoil, a huge amount of change. So we want stability, we want more employer ownership, and we want to continue to raise, you know, the value and importance of vocational education. And if we can do those three things, then actually I'm much more positive about the next 20 or 30 years,
Right.
you know, than probably what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years.
Okay, but you mentioned earlier about the Emirates even being impacted by vocational training, but the country in itself is such a central location throughout the world, and it's got such tourism value. So how exactly would you say that these development of skills or vocational training will actually benefit a country like the UAE?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, if you take catering, hospitality, tourism, if we look at oil and gas, if we look at, very good example, Dubai ports,
Right.
one of the largest operators of freight ports in the world. Well, they need to invest into their workforce. They need to invest into their technicians. Catering hospitality needs to invest into, you know, the staff that are going to be supporting the catering and hospitality industry. So, you know, whether or not you're talking to manufacturing or construction, and there's an awful lot of construction happening here too, you know, skills are an integral part of that economic growth and development.
Right.
And it's important to be able to attract the inward investment. So, you know, I talk to a number of companies who would say, you know, we're interested in moving into that market, but actually we don't think we can get the skilled labour necessary
Right.
to support the investment we're prepared to make. So, you know, whether it's about supporting your own domestic economy, whether it's about supporting inward investment, or whether in some cases you are a country that is going to become a net exporter of skills, investing into skilled labour is going to provide you with longer term economic benefits as that labour begins to sort of migrate
Right.
and provide economic value to its host country, but to its country of original origin too.
Makes sense. All right. But there is this traditional view. I mean, you touched on earlier with the university education and the governments
Yeah.
like to meddle in education. But there is this quite strongly formed view that university education and vocational training don't go hand in hand. They're very separate, disparate entities. So what is your view on that? I mean, do you think that they can come together, or is that just a path? Because even you said you never completed university. So is that something that you can accent with? Or
I think that there is much more scope in the future to bring university education and vocational education closer together. If I just take the UK for the moment, I mean, one thing that we have probably seen as being one of the causes of the skill gaps is effectively polytechnics ceasing to exist.
Right.
So polytechnics were always seen as the vocational universities, where industry and education really came closely together. Now, for many reasons, they've long gone. But we're beginning to see that debate come back into the agenda. And that is linked as well strongly to the issue of progression. So I don't believe it's about vocational or university. You know, I do believe about a system that is integrated, a system that allows you to move between vocational training or academic education. You know, and if we can build educational pathways that allow people to move from one to the other seamlessly, and where the value of each is seen as being of equal merit, then I think we'll have a university system and an education system that works for the betterment of the individual and to industry as a whole. We're some way away from that, but it's encouraging to hear the debate, it's encouraging to see progress being made, and I think long term people will recognise that the two sit hand in hand, and that vocational education and university education are on, you know, equal status and have parity, and are not seen as sort of, you know, the benefit of those that are intelligent and educated and those that perhaps haven't achieved academic ability in schools. I think we can remove that, which will be great.
All right, thank you very much. That was quite interesting.
Thank you. My pleasure being here. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you. That's all that we have for today. For more great interviews and talks with amazing personalities, please stay tuned to Manipal Dubai TV. Thank you for watching.